again, everybody. So this presentation I am particularly excited about. I've seen Simon twice in Los Angeles now at two different events, and both times I walked out of that presentation with my mind. I mean, one of them was actually a full day workshop. And what Simon really does is he is unbelievably great at creating purpose-driven brands and products that drive positive change and the messaging for those. And he is one of the leading speakers on these topics. And today we're really going to discover powerful ways to spread the good word about smart commuting. What is that message that we need to relay to our commuters, our employees, our citizens, that get them engaged on connecting them with the purpose of what they're actually doing. So with that, Simon, I hand it over to you, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks, Matt, for including us on this fantastic day of learning, and thanks for the kind words as well. And so let's dive in. I mean, we find ourselves in an interesting moment in time where, yes, we've got a lot of challenges that we're facing, from congestion and crowded cities and climate change and so on, but we also have some exciting news in that we've got exciting new technology platforms to leverage. We've got new demographics where younger people want to see brands playing a more meaningful role in shaping our future and want to participate in it. And also, we've got greater needs than ever. And those three things together, new technology, younger demographics, and greater needs, actually create an opportunity that we can be pretty excited about. And so I'm here to talk to you about how you actually translate purpose into change, how you lead conversations as a brand, as a government, as a company, as an institution, as a technology partner that can really shape thinking and behavior. And so I'll walk you through some slides that sort of explain some of the best practices that we've observed and that we found to be very, very effective with some of the world's top purposeful brands. And so I'll shift down on the next slide here. The slides don't seem to be responding, but then again, technology always likes to remind us who's in control. And in this case, clearly it's technology. Yep, I think it worked. There we go. So, as I said, we live in challenging times, and within every challenge is actually an opportunity. And in fact, I find in life that when we're faced with these larger challenges of reframing or changing thinking and behavior, the solution is actually buried in the problem itself. And let me explain what I mean as we go through some of the examples today. We live in an incredibly strident time now where, thanks to this conspiracy of circumstances that includes, awareness of the social challenges we face, social media that connects, communities and citizens and customers like never before, and also younger demographics, we live in this era of movements, whether it's Black Lives Matter, We the People, Me Too. The audience that we're speaking to are not only more emboldened than ever to make a difference and play a meaningful role in the world, but they're more encouraged than ever that it's going to make a difference. And they've grown up over the last 10 to 15 years since Arab Spring revolutions, really, in the Middle East, to really see that change is driven as much by themselves as it is by anybody else. And that is actually a very, very positive fact. And we can leverage that to drive the shifts in thinking and behavior, that leverage the technology and these younger demographics to build movements of change that will create the solutions we want. The good news is that you don't need to do all this work on your own. All of these movements are a combination of either consumers or citizens in their own right. Then typically they use celebrities or influencers, so that you're not just collecting eyeballs, you're collecting communities of eyeballs. So you compound your growth and impact as a function of that by collecting communities through influencers or celebrities. And then you will have brand partners. And those three taken together are really the constituent parts that you get to play with and develop and build out over time, so that your movement, your shift in thinking and behavior takes on a life of its own. And when you think about how you're go about doing this, you've got to capture people's interest in the first place. And we all know how ADD and OCD and everything else that we all are these days, and there's always another cat video to look at on Snapchat which commands people's attention. And one of the most powerful ways that brands command attention, that movements are built, is by clearly identifying what they're against, so that people can project themselves into what they're for. And so I would challenge everyone who's listening in to really ask themselves, as you look at the change that you want to facilitate, whether you're a government, university, a partner, a company, car or bike sharing company, what is your enemy? And too often brands will say to themselves, well, we just want to fix this problem or that problem. Well, so do so many other organizations. And you need to have a very clear and a very specific point of view in terms of what impact you want to achieve. So here we see Method, the cleaning products, obviously fairly clear, people against dirty. You've got Adidas, the sporting brand, against inequality. But really identify, what you're against and use that purpose to be your slingshot for the movement that you want to build. And most importantly, too often we find that purpose is a sleepy statement that lies in annual reports or might even be painted on the wall of some institution, but it really needs to shift from being this passive noun to being an active verb. It's got to be something that's a daily practice. This movement you're building has to be a full contact sport that you engage with every day. And as soon as you shift your mindset from one of it being a noun, this sort of institutional statement or declaration for all this, for the public to observe and admire, to it being a verb, things change very, very quickly in how you think about what you do. And all of this sounds great in a vacuum, but we also want to be assured that it does translate into results. And the good news is over the last 5 years, there's been an exponential growth in the amount of data to support what we anecdotally experience or believe around us. For example, on the top left-hand corner of your screen here, 63% of executives say that purpose is the most important driver of innovation. Or down in the bottom row, 9 out of 10 millennials would switch to a brand with a cause. So if you're a brand, a corporation, by aligning yourself with a cause that's relevant and meaningful to your stakeholders' lives, they'll actually be very encouraged to switch to your brand. And these sources come from Harvest Media and Cone Communications and Edelman and Gallup. And these are all the latest statistics around the value proposition of being purposeful in your business. And, you could still be forgiven for being cynical or, skeptical as to whether you can really drive a shift in consumer or commuter thinking and behavior. But look around you at the examples we see. The Tesla Model 3, Elon Musk's promise, or the reason he started Tesla, was to enable sustainable mass transportation. It wasn't to launch a car company. It was to enable sustainable mass transportation. And they had 400,000 pre-orders of the Model 3, a car that wasn't even built yet, unprecedented in the auto industry, because they believed in the need and the mission of the brand. Or Unilever with, so many different brands, but a number of them, including Ben & Jerry's, the purpose-driven brands are growing 30% faster than the other brands. Or even Patagonia, which has this interesting torsion between growth and responsibility, and the whole platform is about responsible growth, has had almost 15% compounded growth over the last 8 years. All of this is being driven by the values proposition of the brands, of the communications that are driven the value, the bottom line value of the company. So as you think about how you want to activate your shift in thinking and behavior in terms of how commuters show up in the world, you can be very confident that by tapping into what they care about, you can not only get their engagement, but get them to co-create that movement with you. That said, it does have to be authentic. I think the last 12 months has been littered with wonderful kind of slow-moving train wrecks of brands that have sort of exploded publicly, whether it's, VW emissions scandal, where they claim to be more fuel efficient through their diesel engines, only to find out that they were gaming the system through software, or Kendall Jenner, who came out and they tried to co-opt Pepsi, the Black Lives Matter movement, and there was a huge reaction against them because of that insensitivity. So you have to do it authentically. And you see brands that do this well, like Airbnb, which has reframed travel around the idea of belonging. And they've done so many different executions of that, providing accommodation for victims of terrorist attacks in Paris, through to doing a commercial like this one you see here called We Accept, which played at the Grammys. And you also see brands like Patagonia out there doing things which probably fall outside the traditional marketing landscape when they do things like launching films like Damnation, which is all about restoring the major watercourses here in the US. So you have to do it authentically, and you should think about how you show up in new and compelling ways. So how do you do that for your brand? What are some key questions you can ask yourself to not only distill down the impact you want to have, but to distill it in a way that differentiates you from other brands out there? And here are a few key questions that we ask in our work with brands to help them define their purpose, to integrate it inside their organization, and then to scale it through their communications to create or inspire a co-creative movement that has a positive impact on the world, that in turn grows their business, the movement that they want to lead. So the first is, what is your enemy? And I talked about Tesla, but look at Airbnb. Their enemy was the homogenous experience of the hotel. And they actually said they don't want you to just go somewhere, they want you to belong somewhere. And suddenly, a website that ostensibly kind of is really in the business of doing accommodation through apartments and homes, suddenly is in the business of this emotional currency called belonging. The same is true of Uber. Their enemy was taxis, that sort of less than exciting or invigorating experience that we've all had in taxis. And they saw a legacy industry that needed to be disrupted. Obviously, Uber's had its own challenges in terms of, their values and how they've gone about them with integrity. But, now with a new CEO in place, now with their new commitments to the values of the brand, you can see that the advantage they've gained by having that first mover advantage and their global footprint has allowed them to really define the industry moving forward, and to really recognize that by unlocking the true power of their values, they can not only scale their organization, they can really become the rideshare partner of choice for so many people. And that's when you see these, shared economy models take on a life of their own. And Uber's definitely been the leader in that space. Secondly, the question that you can ask is, what makes you you? It's often challenging because it's hard to read the label from inside the jar. It's hard to see yourself from, inside the swim of your own company and all the daily demands. And so, we've worked with folks like Tom's, with Blake here, and Richard Branson, his folks. And that I only share those because they're pointed to as some of the top entrepreneurs in the world that have really driven large scale shapes in thinking and behavior. And if I was to distill down the work with both of them in terms of one fundamental differentiating or identifying quality, with Blake, it is his empathy, his ability to really feel for the suffering that other people have, and to innovate in an entrepreneurial sense to create a business model, the one-for-one business model that led to so much business success that allowed them in turn to scale their impact. With Richard Branson, in my experience, it was the defining quality for Richard is the power of family in his life. He is a deeply committed family man, and he treats all of the people, whether it's employees or partners that he associates with the same intimacy and candor and humor that is usually reserved for family. So what makes you you? In our experience, Blake, it's empathy. With Richard, it's family. What is it in your case? So what is your enemy? What makes you you? And then thirdly, what are you the only of? What are you the only of? Because there's lots of people that probably do what you do. There's brands trying to participate. There's, car sharing, there's ride sharing, there's bike sharing. There are other institutions and government bodies that are trying to have an impact on the way commuters behave and address larger issues like climate change and congestion. What are you the only of? And I think, Airbnb provided a very powerful example of saying they're the only crowdsourced accommodation platform on a global scale that is really in the business of belonging. And that's allowed them to unpack a business model which is really built around the whole idea of enabling you to belong anywhere you are in the world, whether it's accommodation, whether it's music festivals, whether it's restaurant guides, whatever it might be. And so really, when you reframe what the movement you're trying to build in emotional terms, you can dimensionalize all you do in so many different ways, so much more so than when you try to name it purely in practical or literal terms rather than emotional terms that are going to resonate with people. And so on the strength of defining your own brand purpose and distilling it or defining it in a differentiated way, how do you create and lead movements? How do you activate and execute the shifts in thinking and behavior that we all need to achieve? And a few insights that we'd like to share, or a few strategies that we've seen very effective for brands. The first is identify cultural stereotypes and upend them. So look at your particular focus, your lens of impact, and ask, what are the stereotypes? What has been around for decades? What do people take for granted? What should never change because things have always been that way? And then think about them anew, reposition them, redefine them. So for example, when Always, the brand, came out and they wanted to talk about, feminine hygiene products, and they wanted to enlist the attention and support of young ladies, and they wanted to really educate young ladies more broadly in terms of self-confidence, they on the stereotype of what it means to be a girl. And they turned it on its head with this global campaign called Like a Girl, which really celebrated, as in a long overdue way, all the great capabilities and attributes of young ladies, and really reframed, prevailing mindset that really wasn't accurate at all. Or, if you think about another brand, it might be Barbie. So, there was Barbie for decades out there, arguably providing some stereotypical view of what it was like to be a woman, because it was, such a dominant plaything for girls out there. Yet, after decades of resistance, they opened up their business model and they launched 5 different models and different skin types and different sizes for young women, far more appropriate to what a woman may look like in the real world. And not only did they do that, not only in doing that did they unlock the goodwill of all those people who wanted to see that happen, but in each one of those different models, they have unlocked the proposition, their new brand story, which is you can be anything. They've unlocked a huge business. You can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, and all the product that, benefits that can come out of that and dimensionalizing that. So examples of upending stereotypes. So what are stereotypes in your area, and what can you do to upend them? Secondly, challenge industry norms. Every industry has a way of behaving that has always been, and that is a function of the institutions and investments that have been made for decades, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be changed. So if you want to stand out, if you want to lead a shift in thinking and behavior that wasn't possible before, you should challenge industry. And there's so many different examples out there, probably just as a function of technology. I mean, the disruptive technology, I'll give you a couple of examples. One of which is Everlane. They looked at the fashion brand and they said the fashion brand with the fashion industry is there's no currency. They pass all these unnecessary costs onto consumers, and so they the platform of radical transparency. And that's one example of a brand looking at an industry norm and saying, no, we're actually going to turn that on its head, and we're going to build our entire company and brand platform around that. There we are. My slides were pausing for dramatic effect and now have lurched ahead. And another example would be, and the slides are just sort of, again, reminding us who's in charge in terms of technology, would be Airbnb with travel. They didn't look at travel through the lens of moving people from one place to another and putting them up for the night. They looked at it through the lens of the emotional resonance that travel provides. And then strategy number 3, the final strategy, build community. If you want to drive a movement that will change consumer or commuter thinking and behavior, and you want them to adopt new behaviors that better serve everybody, you need to build community in new places. And so, for example, Lululemon looked at the yoga space and really broke it out of what might have been a more limited framing of its place in society and said, yoga really is a meditative practice, whatever form that takes. So they've just released a Festo commercial which shows someone drumming, someone dancing, someone reading, someone surfing. And at the end of it, it just says, this is my yoga. And so they've taken this whole idea of mindfulness and yoga and made it mainstream. And then the last example I'll share with you is, Starbucks. Starbucks a long time ago looked at the marketplace and it was crowded with coffee shops. People didn't need another coffee shop. But they said there's 3 places. They wanted to create a third space. There's home and there's work. What is that third space in between that they can create? And so they built community in a new place. And so all of these examples, from upending industry norms to, challenging stereotypes, through to creating community in new places, those 3 strategies are the ways that the successful brands out there are commanding movements and shifts of thinking and behavior by creating something in a new place, in a new way, something that gets people's attention so that they're not just looking at Facebook or Snapchat or the latest the deal flow of emails that we get every day. So if I was to sum up the benefits of really identifying your purpose in a singular and distilled way, and then taking it to market so you can drive the shift in thinking and behavior that you want from commuters, think of your purpose in several terms. It allows you to define clearly your business and marketing strategy so you don't get lost in the noise of other Me Too organizations that are trying to have a positive impact in the world. You've got to stand out. It gives you market relevance to younger demos. You know, these younger audiences from Millennials and Gen Z, they are your partners. They are the ones who should build the impact that you want to have with you. It will allow you also to win the talent wars in terms of attracting the employees you want. And those employees are absolutely critical in terms of achieving the results you want. And then it obviously, as I said, will drive commuter engagement and advocacy so that it's not just you and them doing it, but they're out there being a champion. The person who works with you in terms of your initiative should be effectively an extension of your marketing department. So you need to equip about the impact you're trying to achieve, your purpose, and then they can become an advocate. And then that will realize the social impact that you want to have and give everybody involved the fulfillment. So that's what I had to share today, and I'd love to, Matt, maybe open up to any questions there are or any questions that might come.
Thanks so much, Simon.
You can contact me there, but Matt, what comes to mind?
Yeah, so I actually don't have any questions on the line right now, but I wanted to encourage folks to follow up with Simon. Simon, this has been the things that we're receiving through the questions panel are just accolades that this is fantastic, that this is something that really resonates with folks. So that's so much appreciation from us. Thank you for being a part of the CommuteCon family, for sharing your wisdom and insight with us. And if anybody wants to reach out with Simon, again, his contact information is on the screen, and we'll be sharing these slide decks and videos after the event as well. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you around, Simon. Take care.
Thanks so much, Matt.